borrow from Otege's language, your being is at once natural and extra natural. Remember, you are at once individual in the sense that you are unique. Your subjective self is yours. I can't think for you. I can't do the feeling of pain for you. If you are feeling pain, if they are pressing your soul and you are feeling hurt, the feeling of the pain is yours. It's private to you. There's subjectivity. There's uniqueness. You are conscious of yourself. Your consciousness is not mine. I can't be conscious for you. So all these are your individuality, and that cannot be denied. But you are also at once communal, meaning what? You're at once relational. Your being, before you even existed, it as a result of some two people whose decision that you should be here. When you were born, you found yourself already in a context. That's what Jechi means when he says, Onipa free through Besia, Obesio Nipa crew. So you don't choose it, you are it. You are at once a being that has individual aspect and at the same time what communal or relational aspect. And so as I said earlier before I started the recording, you are your mother's daughter. You didn't choose it, you are it. And based on the grooming and the civilization that you found yourself in and the cultural background and the language, blah, 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 you become a composite blend of various levels of what? Interrelationality. So you are, maybe you are Asante. That means you're also Akan, which also means you are Ghanaian, which also means you are West African, which also means you are African, which also means perhaps you are a woman. So you belong to the grouping that you label as what? Gender. When we're talking gender, you belong to the women group. And then perhaps when we are talking faith, you will be Islamic. You see what I mean? So different levels of belonging. When we come into academia, you may belong to a certain school of thought. If you are doing business, international or local, it will inspire your being in a certain way. So if you see a human being, don't think you have seen an individual. That's the whole discussion in the Personism text. You have seen a complex blend of intricate, the being you see there is full of interconnected relationality. As you speak now, even your thinking frame, how you are choosing, how you are voting, the kind of life partner you will choose, the society you will consider right or wrong, is as a result of how you have been groomed. One, your individual, there comes the word, choice. Two, the exposure you've had. Three, they all come together to make up your being. Therefore, what? Therefore, a human person is not correctly to be labeled as the individual. That is what was the subject matter of the debate. Now, what does this perspective of personism do? It helps the debate to move forward from one level, which was not fruitful, because they will never get past each other. Look at the one that we studied when you were level 100, the Rastafarian thing at Hashimoto. The people think this is our faith. The school says this is what the school's position is. It's an individual communitarianism thing. LGBTQ is an individual communitarianism thing. If you leave home and say that it is my choice to have the face of a tiger, remember personal identity. My choice, I have a right to that, to choose the kind of face that I feel I want. No problem with it. I. Go choose that face. But remember, your children have a right to their mother. Or you've forgotten that? When you go and you become a tiger, what about the responsibility you owe to your relational other who are part of your being necessarily? They didn't choose to be your mother. They are. So when you see that, you can now start reconciling some of the discussions in the mouse paper with the Taylor paper that I'm projecting now. Oh, no, I've stopped projecting that. Let me project it. The Taylor paper, which tells you that, look, it takes from the individualism, communitarianism debate and goes all the way to show you what could be wrong with how the debaters are debating. But he skewed his critique. I'm looking at the Charles Taylor paper now. Taylor skewed his critique more towards what? The communitarian. In other words, he felt that they have balanced the thing so much against the communitarian that his whole critique tried to bring the communitarian back into the picture, the communitarian viewpoint into the picture. That is why it looks as if Charles Taylor is arguing for communitarianism. But mind you, Taylor is not a communitarian. He doesn't even want you to call him that. He says, what? I'm not communitarian. What is he then? He's a liberal. Okay? He's a liberal. But he advocates for the communitarian view because he thinks that the equal recognition that must be given to both sides has been overlooked. Both sides meaning what? The person as an individual and the community on the other hand. This is Taylor's language that Miles critiques a bit of. She agrees with Taylor to an extent, but then critiques the language Taylor is also using, trying to show that Taylor would have done fine if only he corrected the language. As for the earlier ones, like McIntyre, Sandel, the moderate African communitarian, the communitarian views, etc., they are totally way off, says Miles, because their view may end up in the name of correcting the extreme I, me, myself. That shows strongly in the individualist argumentation. In their bid to correct that, they might end up pulling the individual so much into, there we go, community. I'm using the individual in quotes because I critique that. But I'm saying they might end up pulling the person all the way into community. In other words, they would overemphasize communal rights or community rights, so much so that now we will not even have choice. So you go and bring a wife home, then they'll say, we will not marry her. As if you and them are going to marry the woman. Don't I have a choice any longer? That's the other side of the coin. Critiquing what? The communitarian and say, don't have that posture. Where you make it look as if people don't have individual choices any longer. People are not unique. People can't think creatively outside of the box of the collective. That cannot be correct either, says the pessimist. So what? So Taylor and others like the communitarians that were mentioned in the Miles paper would have that challenge. Why? Because they are still using the language of what? The individual versus the community. They as if they are two concrete entities that are fighting for position. The Miles paper says, no, we only have one concrete entity, which is the human being, the person. But that human being person, you or me, has what? Two dimensions, two aspects of herself. What are they? An individual aspect, a part that is private to her. And then what? Communal aspect, the relational side. Even if you say, when you go buy me brown bread, it is enough to help us know your relational ties culturally. If you are a woman and you're a little bit more assertive, we are able to tell that either you are academic or you are Western. Because it is not typically, you see what I'm doing, African, for example, even Eastern, to be so outspoken like that. So we are able to tell your being, which is not fixed. Because your relational ties may begin with your mother and father, but it is not only your mother and father that inspires your relationality, your connected belongingness. You see that? You are at once inspired by your faith, academia, your sex, your continent, your thinking frame. If you were born into a certain, I don't know, Jew or what's the thing, German, look at the posture. You are your history. So that is the strength of the communitarian argument, properly captured in the correct language. This is what Miles is saying. You can't cut yourself off your history. If you are Ghanaian, you have been colonized before by the British. You can't cut yourself from it. It's part of your package. But you are able to make decisions that evolves and creates a new you and relationality out of that past. How is that possible? Because you have an individual aspect of you that makes choices, that thinks, that creatively reflects. That is not a collective thing. Thinking is not a collective thing. But we can have a collective thought created by the ingenuity of one person out of his or her what? Individuality. See the point? So Taylor's text, at least from the Miles perspective, may be the view that improves upon the language of the communitarianism, individualism debate. However, the little challenge with the Taylor view is what has been pointed out. So Miles will say, opt rather for a correct language. So it will help you capture the conceptual thing behind the debate. Speak well. Don't call the thing a dog and then look for a stick to hit it. If you call it a dog, you treat it as a dog. But if you call the human being by a complex self, person, unipa, person, as soon as you hear person, you know you're not dealing with only a being that has rights, uniqueness, and creativity, but you are at once dealing with a being that attends church, has a family, comes from a continent, has been colonized before, or has colonized before. And so if you want to give, say, maternity leave, it will be inspired by your understanding of the person being a woman. Having relational ties. If you are thinking of serving pizza to the folks in your company, then as soon as you deal with people as persons, you realize that you have a Muslim, hardworking, colleague or worker who cannot take a pizza that has pork on it. You see, I'm trying to show you something. So you will become conscious of the interconnectedness of the person, not of an individual. You talk an individual is only individuality that you see when you see a person. So rights, where is their right? You have to feel, let them choose. Let them choose, saying you belong. It's also part of belonging. So your choices must cohere with your belongingness. Else, I enter the lecture hall in my bikini. I'm a mother of 4, so you can imagine. And I start teaching. Today, we are doing it because I have my right to feel fresh air. It's my right. Or you don't know. But I have to be conscious because I don't only have rights. If I have my right coming from my individuality, see that, to fresh air, and so I take off my clothing and come in my bikini, I must immediately at once, naturally also recognize that I owe the people that I'm teaching the responsibility of presenting myself in a way that can allow them also enjoy their right to uninterrupted teaching. That is the point that makes a human being distinct from the stone, or human being a being worth its sort. We are what? Not entities that are just hanging in the air. So human being is a complex blend of individuality. Look at the language, oh, don't say of the individual and of the no. An individual. How do you want to call the human being who is both cassava and plantain blended together into fufu? Why do you want to call the fufu cassava when there is plantain in it? Why don't you call the fufu plantain? You can't call it plantain, you can't call it cassava. It's fufu. It's a complex blend. You have flour, you have sugar, you have egg, they put it together to create cake. When you create the cake, which is a composite being, you can't take sugar out. You can't take flour out alone, I mean. You can't take margarine out. When you take margarine, it will come with flour. When you take sugar, it will come with the other. That is the human being. Being, ing, continuous. Remember Plato's word of being. That understanding is important for philosophical reflection on how human society should be organized. Okay? So all those were preambles. If you did some reading, you see that things have fallen into place a little. Now let's see what Taylor was saying then in reaction to the debate, and then I'll be interspersing it with what I have presented nicely on Miles's Personism. So the Personism has an advantage, we think, of doing what? Responding to the concerns of both individualists and what? Communitarians. Individualists are emphasizing rights, autonomy, freedom, choices, all these being what? Individual dimensions of the person, if you speak Miles's language. Whilst the communitarian says that, look, human beings belong. I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am. You can't say I, my government, my this, me, myself, and what kind of thing is that? You belong. Your being will be fulfilled in the context of all of us. So there they go, also stressing the collective, the individuality, the communality of a person. That's the communitarian. Personism will deal with that easily if it encompasses the two aspects. It is a clarification of what it is that we are dealing with as a human being. Call that being a person. Let us know that it entails both individuality and communality, not the community, because there we go. It is not just one community that defines the being of a person. I've just explained that. From gender to business community, to political community, to religious community, all these and more encompass the person's being. So look at an educated, I'm talking about formal education, well exposed meaning has met different ways of life, different cultures. Look at that person versus the person who hasn't seen any other way of life than the one that he or she is exposed to, and see the depth that the two people will have. One, you will see, will understand human society. But he has seen certain things. He has seen people who are eating snakes as their delicacy. So the exposure is not the same as someone who has stayed all their lives in one corner of a certain city or state or village. They will only be local champions in their personhood. Got it? Let's hear your comment and then I'll go to Taylor. Any questions? All right, so if you see Taylor on the screen, I would like to examine the issue of political. Yes, sir. Was your hand raised? I didn't see it.
No, madam, I didn't raise my hand.
Okay, go ahead. Next time, please do it so I can pick you up. You go ahead.
Atomism at the top, then I was wondering if you could help me.
Please restart your question. Restart your question. Don't worry.
I said I've seen atomism at the top there, and I was wondering
what did you when you read it? When you read it, what did you see there? Or when you Googled, just you did a quick search, atomism, Taylor. What did it say? Who is speaking? Who is speaking now, please? Because you raise your hand. I don't know.
Bernard Park.
What's it? Oh,
Bernard Park.
Bernard. Yeah, Bernard. What did you see when you Googled? This is level 300. Oh.
A natural philosophy proposing that the physical universe is composed of fundamental indivisible components.
No. Did you do Taylor? Because the word, you see, it's just like inflation. Inflation could mean inflating balloon. Inflation could mean the economics term and so on. So if when you Google, you want to put a name to it, otherwise you read things from the word atom. Atom is a scientific word. Okay, but if you Google it, you have to search it with Taylor. So, but the textbook itself, this, what I've projected now is at Saka. You are going to do a group work on it. I wanted to open an assignment today, but I don't want to stress people too much because you won't read if I don't do that. So what did you see? Let me ask the rest and see what we come up with. Anybody? Bernard Park, who is good like that? You guys haven't read. The green leaves are burning. What will happen to the dry ones?
Oh, man.
Oh, why had you should read. Go ahead. So Samuel, let me take Samuel Asante.
Okay, madam.
Yes.
When I read, asked, it was like as Aristotle says that humans are political animals, like they are not self-sufficient, but
Very good.
the atomism says that humans are self-sufficient. We don't depend on.
Very good. Yes, you read it. That's a good start. So when you see the atomism paper, Taylor sets up nicely. He says, look, There is a certain view that I want to criticize. It is a view called atomism. So Taylor himself is not an atomist. This discussion we are having, if you go to that my academic channel that I keep pointing you people to, there's a recording like what we are having right now there, maybe 2 or 3 of them. I don't remember. You can go to the playlist for Field 304. Play the recording if you are struggling to, so that you get the content. You have to find knowledge. It's tertiary education. You have to go and find, how did I know the things I'm teaching you? Nobody taught me. Our time, because there was no computer. ICT, if you go there, one computer, about 100 of us, we are in a queue. Some go 3 days after. So the building wasn't even like this. One photocopy that one person has is inside the person's pocket. For thousands of us, we'll be chasing it. I'm just trying to show you how we have transitioned. You search for knowledge, you make an effort at it. That is what you do, and make it in a strategic way so that it doesn't overwhelm me. So I've told you there is a recording on the same topic there. We have that session, the Taylor paper. I went through it with them like I'm doing now. So you would have had prior information, at least on what he means by the instrumental view of community and what actually his argumentation is. Bring them apart, bring the two sides of the coin to an equal moral status. Let them stand on the same grounds. Don't give one priority over the other. And so he argues to show you why he says so, and why he would think that anyone who is giving individualism and a priority, moral primary first, making it primary over and above communities, arguing in an atomistic way. All this has been said. So in this discussion, you would have engaged. So when I asked, so what did you see? You're also recounting what you saw. It helps you to see the text and then to understand it, and that's all. There were 300, second semester, going to 400 to write a long essay or thesis. That should be your posture. Not to spoon feed. That's not that the person doesn't know what to come and tell you, but it is not a good training if we have to read and tell you all the time. All right, that's a word to the wise. It's a core subject, too, not an elective. I can only be liberal to an extent. So if you look at Taylor's text, that's what I projected, page 1. I gave you the original text, so you don't have to go looking for it. It is an article. What does he say? One of you read quickly, very quickly. Let me touch on it. Then we'll go. Who can read for me? Raise your hand, please, if you are reading. Why are they all IDs? I'm taking attendance. So it's only Bright, Nana, something, and Deborah Gesu that I have the full name. But I or say Prince Ankoma. Prince is always signed up online, but I'm not sure he's there. he thinks, I don't know. Angelina Iguazi is Alexander Usu. Alexander, now do you understand moderation? Abigail Affle is there. Abigail Otu is here. Abigail, I hope you did fine. Your eye wasn't too good. You're not happy with it, but I hope that ultimately it turned out well. Your essays were nice. I really enjoyed some of the essays. I even had to, I had to tell your class rep to send me some ideas. Some of them were exceptionally excellent. I was really happy about them. Though 1 or 2 were not too good, but it's fine. I see Florence. Florence, please read for me. Thank you very much.
I would like to examine the issue of political atomism, or at least to try to clarify what this issue is. I want to say what I think atomism doctrines consist in, and to examine how the issue can be joined around them. This is how they might be proved or disproved, or at least cogently argued for or against, and what in turn they may be used to prove. The term atomism is used loosely to characterize the doctrines of social contract theory, which arose in the 17th century, and also successor doctrines which may not have made use of the notion of social contracts, but which inherited a vision of society as in some sense constituted by individuals for fulfillment of ends which were primarily individual.
Okay.
Certain forms.
No, don't continue. Thank you so much. So I'm just trying to show you. He sets off. Look at his paragraph. And I wanted us to use the original text, quoting Taylor. It says, I would like to examine the issue of political atomism. You see, so if you go and search for atomism raw, they will give you science, the smallest indivisible part of matter, atom, and stories about that. Just like determinism. If you don't qualify it, you go looking for determinism as a theory, you will go and find things about creation and what have you there. Meanwhile, you were looking for moral view, the moral view about whether our choices are already, predisposed to go a certain way and stuff like that. So this is political atomism. But even better still, Taylor's language is a word he has coined to quote and unquote, if you like, denigrate. It's a negative word. It's like you see someone and say, this, if you are doing this and this and this, what you are doing is witchcraft. You the people doing that, you are doing witchcraft. It doesn't mean the one speaking it subscribes to witchcraft. He's identifying a problem in the way some sociopolitical thinkers have argued when it comes to the issue of what? Individual versus the community. You see that we are still saying the individual because we are capturing the discussion as it was before the personist argument came in. The personist argument says, don't use the language, the individual, to mean the human person. You would have given just a skewed version of what the human person is, a slanted portion. Why would we call, how do I even say it? Call a human being by just an aspect of her? No. So then she shouldn't be called the individual, because you won't call the human being the community or the communal. When you say human being, do we say the communal? No, if we don't say the communal, then we shouldn't say the individual either, because she's not just half, she's the two, but the two mixed together so that you can't pull one out anymore. Fufu or cake, let it ring. That's what you are. Don't think that you have, I mean, it's my right, it's my right, it's my right. Before you talk the right, what I'm saying now is, Taylor, look, you already obligationally tied to a community. Onipa fresuru besi fema, besi onipa krum. The human being descends from above and descends into a human habitation. So the argument is coming from Aristotle. Look at Aristotle, far Greece. The human being is naturally, by nature, what? A social being. You're already a political entity. Political meaning you belong to a police, or if you like social. Social, you might think social means you chat with people. No, you are connected naturally. I said your being was decided by your mother and father. Maybe they were even chatting under a tree. Then papa. When you talk, eyes up, no, my choice. Choices are not hanging in abstraction. That's the whole point. Because you didn't even choose to be in the first place. So choices are important. Uniqueness cannot be denied. Your subjectivity is very important. And these are all expressive of what? Your individuality. No problem. But they are not, here, Taylor, now, to be pursued without a commensurate. Going to that place where he has it. If you had done some reading, you see that the things would just be falling into place. They're not to be pursued without a commensurate respect for an equal principle. Look on my screen, of belonging. Here, where is my highlighter? An equal principle of belonging. See, I put the highlighter, look there. You cannot deny that you are equally a being that belongs. That must be seen as naturally connected to other people. There's a reason why, because it will then lay obligations on you. Naturally, you were born female. Naturally, it makes you behave a certain way. And so we can't talk of just the straight human being as if there are no ties to a being. My sister, so what you were reading earlier, let me take us back there. Oh dear. And then we can wrap up and go and do the work, which is what humans do. Sister, where were you? Certain, no? Oh, started with, read the first one. He says, I would like to examine. The guy says, I want to say what I think the atomist doctrines consist in. What he calls the atomist doctrine. What does it consist in? What is it? Take note, it is not what he is defending. Taylor is not defending it. He's critiquing it. But he's putting all of them together to clarify what exactly he means. Those who gossip, those who do this, bear false witness, those who, they are all iniquity working people. Oh, and Brandy, then he says, and such people have done so and so and so and so. So atomism is a label he's giving to those who hold on to. He says what? An extreme form. So how does he define it? Until you go back to where you read, this is how they might be proved or disproved, or at least cogently argued for or against, and what intent they may be used to prove. What is that view? Read it, the term atomism. Read that again.
The term atomism is used loosely to characterize the doctrines of social contract theory, which arose in the 17th century, and also successor doctrines, which may not have made use of the notion of social contract, but which inherited a vision of society as in some sense constituted by individuals for the fulfillment of ends which were primarily individual.
Wait, that's where you got to where? We are,
Yes,
he says,
please.
I use that label, yes, my dear. I use that label to characterize the doctrines of social contract. Do you remember a social contract? The one we just did. Which arose in the 17th century, 1640 something, 1690, 1620. They are the 17th century folks. And also successor doctrines, doctrines that followed that, but are like them, which do what? Which may not have been, which may not have made use of the notion of social contract, but which inherited a vision. Okay, a certain vision. So they may not present themselves as social contract, but they inherited that view, that way of looking at life. Individual. You are not just individual, right? You are at once connected. Be sensitive to that. That at once also related to other things. Then those who also say you are connected, you're connected, you offer, you want, you're this. You too, be patient with the brother. He's not just connected, he's also an individual. He has individuality. So human beings are in constant flux. Because the thing Paul says, there are two forces within me, each one trying to overcome the other. That's the real deal of a human person, making decisions. You really wanted to choose this, but it looks like this one will augur well for everyone. You are feeling very hot. You are sitting there, like, if finding yourself. Meanwhile, you could have just taken off your shirt. That's all. And they will blow on you, and the lecture will enter quickly. But you can't. Because you have to be conscious of your relational others. I just use those. You think those who have nuclear bombs or whatever couldn't have thrown the bomb? They could have thrown it and killed their enemies. But they have to be conscious of what their neighbors or those that they share some ties with, who may not have that kind of defense. I'm trying to show you that human beings are more complex than just this right thing, and then others to just this community thing that we are doing. It is a real conversation, a dialogue that is between self at different levels. Self as my individual self versus my communal self. You go and touch Ochimai or Asantimai or Arab or Muslim or something. Like I'm talking about the collective. The people who rise up is because their sense of self is not only to their individual self, but to their communal. They are very sensitive to that. You touch one, you touch the whole group. What do we mean? So individuality is only an aspect of a being. Now, back to Taylor. So we get what he was saying to summarize all the extreme views. I think he does a very good job, with the exception of the language there. The same with Jetty's view of moderate communitarianism, except that Jetty was criticized, and I could also criticize it for the moderacy. How moderate would the communitarian view be? It means that the thing is a communitarian view that you should moderate. My friend is still communitarian. See that? We should moderate it. So you give priority to community. That is what it means. Just that it should allow for the individual to. That can be abused again. The Miles paper says, no, we don't have the community versus the individual. It is a blend. The being we have is a concrete human person with aspects that are individual and communal at different levels. So each communal relation that you are dealing with will determine which option the human person will find worthwhile. Very important. If I'm arguing at an academic setting, my lines of reasoning may not be same if I'm doing my faith reasoning or if I'm at the family meeting, because the degree of belongingness varies. It's as simple as that. So the focus of discussions will vary, even though it's the same me. That's the whole point. At home, I'm my husband's wife, my children's mother. I'm not a lecturer at home. Nothing lecture will get home. If it does, there's confusion. Understand the complex blend. At church, those of you who know my role at church. That place, you can't come and do wife, mother there. No. Another role. At office, the same human person, but the relational you see, so you are a complex blend. Nanado is our first gentleman of the land. You think if he's on the parade at this match, the wife will come and tap his bottom and say they will treat me there is in Prama. No, she can't do that there. But you check them in the room and see. They have children, obviously. Children don't come from ATM machine. They will get busy. Mommy will drill grandpa some of the time. You say, sorry, get up, turn around. But not when he's in the role, you see what I'm doing? The role of president. But he's also a grandpa. Grandchildren will poo on his lap, left, right, center. It is fine. Not at the presidency. One being. So the human person, or Danny, no, Danny, but there is one thing essentially holding the being to be. That is how you must see a human person and treat them that way. So every time they are a project in the making, you don't finish being a person. That is what we should understand. Interconnectedness. Okay. So Taylor is not having all this intricate discussion. He's thinking of still the individual. So he thinks of a human being as the individual. And then he's trying to see how community will embrace the individual. An individual will embrace community so that they will be a part. That's why it seems almost impossible all the time. It is in the conception and in the word, the language. He says, I want to say, I'm showing you what he doesn't like about them. What do those people who succeeded the social contractors say? In fact, some of them are even utilitarians. I asked Madame to stop, so she hasn't read that part. They inherited a vision of society as, in some sense, constituted by individuals. Watch. For the fulfillment of ends, that is outcomes, goals, aspirations, which were primarily individual. That's the problem. People thought society is made up of individual human beings who have only come together to constitute that society. Remember the social contract, all the versions, for a certain goal. The goal is ultimately to benefit the individual. From Hobbes to Locke to Rousseau, it's always because we want to ensure that the individual has survival, peace, mutual, whatever. It's always about the individual. So he says the social contract theorists and others like them who may not even present as social contract theorists, But they argue as if the whole thing about society is to meet certain ends or goals or aspirations that are individual in nature. He goes further to say, sister, read that one too. We'll read a little, then the rest I'll ask you to go and do it.
Certain forms of utilitarianism are successor doctrines in this sense.
What
The
benefits? I'm coming. What is used for utilitarianism? The utility theory. So an action is right if it benefits the greatest good, but if it profits or gives the greatest good for the greatest number. What are we measuring? How the thing benefits people. It's always the individual. Just say people, the individual. That's what it is. It's certain doctrines of utilitarianism is like that. The term is also applied to contemporary doctrines, which hark back to social contract theory, or which try to defend, in some sense. This I continue from where I've reached. Did you see where I've reached? Continue.
Yes, or which try to defend, in some sense, the priority of the individual and his rights over society, or which present a purely instrumental view of society.
I will ask you a question on this, if I've not even done so already. They present an instrumental view of society, or they think of the individual as having priority, that you will use primacy from the word primary first, primacy of the individual over and above the community. That is what Taylor is addressing, the over and above. He hasn't said we shouldn't recognize individuality, so you can't call him a communitarian. And he tells you, why are you people calling me communitarian? I'm not communitarian, I'm a liberal. But I advocated for bringing the balance back. So if it's a seesaw, the individual right has been raised all the way high up, whilst communitarian ideals have been pulled all the way down into the soil at the other side. You see the seesaw, the one that if one goes up, the other can. And Taylor says that is problematic. Balance it, bring it to the middle. So the one that is down was his preoccupation, how to move community and its ideals up. That's why it seemed as if he's arguing for community. No, he's asking for balance. He's a liberal, he says. So you want to be careful when you're labeling him like that. That's why when we call Taylor communitarian, it's in quote, he and all the others. When trouble is coming, they say they are not communitarian because of some implications there. All right, watch. The same with the individualists. They say we are not atomists. Everyone denies it. That's why we are going to read. Sister will read and then someone else will take over from here. Go ahead, my lady.
Of course, any term loosely used in political discourse can be defined in a host of ways. And perhaps one should even leave out of philosophical discourse altogether those terms which tend to be branded as epithets of condemnation in the battle between different views. One might well argue that atomism is one such because it seems to be used almost exclusively by its enemies. Even extreme individualists like Nozick don't seem to warm to this term, but tend to prefer others, like individualism. Perhaps I'm dealing with the wrong term, but there is a Doc, please.
Very good. Listen. So, like I was saying, even those who are strictly individual or individualists who say that there is no reason for us to give any recognition to community, communality, whatever. Even they don't like that label atomism. But they say, oh, but we have not said that. We have not said that we don't have any connection whatsoever with a shared setting. Why are they saying that? Why are they also running away? And that's where I keep telling you the relevance of the Maths paper coming. The Maths paper tells you, look, these two extremes, they are not disagreeing. It's just linguistic difficulty that is affecting the conceptual. Because no person in their right frame of mind can ever deny that people belong and share and they are interrelated. No individualist will admit that, oh, maybe I landed from space and fell on it. Even Jesus needed permission to enter it because he wanted to take on human flesh. He needed permission. Oh, yes. had to subject himself to being human. This earth, before you come, you would have already entered into communality, connected. You'll be connected to something. You have to have come from somewhere. So what? So the extremist individualists will admit that people share a life, belong, which is what the communitarian is advocating. You see? So is there a disagreement? No. Then when you turn the tables around, the strictest communitarian cannot deny that people have uniqueness, that people have subjectivity, conscious of themselves. These are all what? Individual. You can't say we are all thinking. I mean, I'm thinking, you're thinking for you. That's what I mean. No. Creativity is an individual, it's an ingenuity is individual. So even the strictest communitarian would also agree that what? People or persons have what? Uniqueness, choice, individuality. See, if so, Master's question is then what is the disagreement? That is making people with this debate has been, you know, as late as 2023, as we are talking, we are discussing the same thing. You know why? Because it doesn't go away if the people don't address it well. How do I know we are discussing? When the Vice President of America came, you think what were we discussing? Yeah, it's individual versus community, LGBTQ discussion. Borders around that, something is a human matter. Oh yes, it is. It is. Look at Sam George, the Honorable Sam George, and the team at Parliament. Look at our very eloquent, assertive president. You know, like trying to be diplomatic and all. What is the issue? A friend, it's not a friend, sir, but someone listened to him. They said it blatantly. Now if they are doing this, is it something that they are doing something to? You know, that kind of language. As if it is themselves, not us. And others, no. This is our fabric, our social fabric. It is individualism, communitarianism, debate to Tom. The thing has landed. It's not gone. Not ever be overbeaten, because that is how our life. When people are talking my state, my government, G8, whatever, G12, G28, G20,000, what is it? It is creating communities, a sense of belonging, so that they don't feel isolated. See BRICS, individual sovereign states coming together to create a communal resource language, public, a whole created out of the particulars, to still represent. So if you touch the hand, which is one other nation, the rest will come after you. That is it. That is what Zelensky wants from the people. I don't know if he has it now. It's the same thing. So people shouldn't think that, oh, this debate 2000 and this, we finished that. No, it's still there in a subtle form. We are philosophers, we are not political science and sociologists. See, we interrogate the matters at the foundation. That's why I'm pointing these out to you. It's still there, people. So on our screen now, the man is showing us clearly which groups he's dealing with. And sister read that. And he says, I am calling, look on my screen, please. I'm pointing to this now, where I've just highlighted here. I am calling atomists. What am I calling atomists? This is Taylor talking. The doctrines that underline this 17th century revolution in the terms of normative discourse, which we associate with the names of what? Hobbes and Locke. I continue. Look at this paragraph now, oh dear. We will do online thing, but you are reading this paragraph. These writers and others who presented social contract views have left us a legacy of political thinking. Look, keep looking on your screen. I'm quoting Taylor now, Charles Taylor, in which the notion of rights play a central part in the justification of political structures and action. The notion of rights, I've said all of that. The central doctrine of this tradition is an affirmation of what we call the primacy of rights, making rights primary first. I've said that also. Which theories are those? So the next paragraph answers that. Those who haven't, if you read this, you would have seen it. If you didn't, I have introduced you to it. Read the Taylor paper, else you can't answer my. Read Miles's paper, the social contract theory. Read them and engage the discussion. If you don't speak Ghana, then it was not meant for you. Otherwise, you write the paper again. I want people to learn. When you become a DC or whatever post, then you go and make decisions left, right, center, and bind all of us in the name of communality. Okay? Theories which do what? Let's have someone else. Thank you so much, my lady. Someone else read for me. Raise your hand if you want to read. Very quickly, please. And 10. That's 9. Oh, okay. Mohammed Sani, thank you so much. Those who do the class participation, did you see the additional marks? They went now. I used them, Papa. Go ahead, say Sani.
Doc, please, should I start from these writers?
Oh, I said, sir. Oh, my apologies, sir. I thought it was a gentle. Forgive me. Yes, from these writers.
This is
Theories
Nafisa.
which are set. Nafisa, forgive me. Read theories which are set the primacy.
Okay. Theories which assert the primacy of right are those which take as a fundamental, or at least a fundamental, principle of their political theories and the political theory, the ascription of certain rights to individuals, and which deny the same status to a principle of belonging or obligation. This is a principle which states our obligation as men to belong or to sustain society, or a society of a certain type, or to obey authority or an authority of a certain type. Primacy of right theories, in other words, accepts a principle ascribing.
That is the point that we should take note of. So Madame is going to read that. Everyone take note of that. What he doesn't like about primacy of rights is what we are going to read now. Please continue, my lady, from here.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, please read.
Primacy of right theory, in other words, accept a principle ascribing rights to men as binding unconditionally. Binding, that is, on men as such, but they do not accept as similarly unconditional a principle of belonging or obligation. Rather, our obligation to belong or to sustain a society or to obey the authorities is seen as derivative, as laid on us unconditionally through our consent or through its being to our advantage.
Very good. Don't continue. The word there was conditionally, as laid on us conditionally. Okay. So it simply means these people that Taylor is critiquing. He says, I have a problem with such theories. All of them, I put them together. Because there is something that is common to all these theories, whether the social contract ones, some utilitarian versions, or the successor doctrines in today's life discussions in social and political philosophy. What is it about them? They all give primacy to the discourse on rights. What is this current discussions? Everything going on is about rights. Rights and even the democracy discourse is about rights. But some people run a kingdom. You see, some people run a kingdom. I keep asking, there's a kingdom which is not voted for. It's just hereditary, one after the other. We have some in Ghana, we have some in other parts of the world. But world democracies that are showing us that we have kingdoms, and we don't frown on it. The point is, right. I bring it back here. It's supposedly the language. It's supposed to be the language currently. Without, that is where Taylor's heartbeat is. They pursue the primacy of rights as binding unconditionally. There is no condition. It is their right to this, it's their right to that. This person's right to this. That nation has a right to this and that and that. Binding unconditionally. That one they don't object. He says, but they do not accept as similarly unconditional. That's his problem. similarly unconditional when they are talking of the principle of belonging or obligation. That one is not like, it is also equally unconditional. See the point? This is what Taylor calls atomism. When you are dealing with a human being, as if all there is to him or her is right, as if he landed like an atom on Earth, no connection whatsoever. It's the smallest indivisible part of matter that can exist on its own. But your very existence is the product of community, says the Akam version of communitarian, captured by the Redu, the African versions, even the communitarian thinkers from Western perspective. Say this, you didn't come. Look at you. Were you born? Did you drop from space? So it has to be equally, it's equality, similarity that Taylor is advocating for. Not a denigration of rights, no. Rights are very important, he argues. That is why Miles's contribution, we think, helps to deal with the two concerns without, compromising one over the other. Unlike perhaps as critiqued by others, the moderate communitarian view, for example, which would make communitarianism still the ish, but that it should just accommodate the individual. You see, it will still be a version of communitarianism. So back here, it is equal moral standing that Taylor is advocating for. Moral standing of both the rights of the individual and the obligations that the individual owes to his communal belonging. Rather, he says, what do? They don't do that. What do? They think the obligation we owe to society to sustain it, to ensure that the moral fabric of society is held constant and protected and preserved. They think that that one is just insofar as it's augurs well for the individual. So if the individual doesn't want that, then we don't have to be worried about society. We make it derivative. As I said earlier, it is a means to an end. Remember your moral philosophy, if you did Kant, deontology. It says don't use a human being as a means to an end. That would be considering the human being as an instrumental, as of what? Instrumental value. Her value is only insofar as she produces something else. Never do that with a human being, says what's happening? Kant, Immanuel Kant. So don't let the baby that Johnny Bravo has put into your tummy become the thing that you are going to use to lock the guy, get him to marry you. No. What do you mean? Don't use the baby as a means to an end. Instrumental value is what I'm explaining, or derivative, a value that is derivative. You derive it from another. So what? Respect for community and its well-being and its welfare is only useful, and we will consider that if it will augur well for the individual person. In other words, they make rights the kingpin. Every other thing should be subordinate to rights. This is what Taylor says is so reprehensible. He argues with all his strength against it. He says through our consent or through its being to advantage. Remember the social contractual. So if it doesn't benefit us as individuals, then we say that we don't like it. I'm done. The rest you read. Let me see if there's something else to add. Sister, thank you. You did a good job. The obligation to belong is derived in certain conditions from the more fundamental principle which ascribes rights. We've said that. Maybe one more can read this other paragraph. He sets it up nicely, and then the rest are the arguments he makes. Raise up your hand if you read. Very quickly, quick. I want to end. That's why I'm doing that. Okay. Dog, the hair, she teach the thing, the woman, the bio, the okay, say you won't read it. And you come and give fans. Hey, Jude, are you there? I never meet you in class. Oh.
Yeah.
Or you come. Or you come, but I don't know that you are Jude. You are my friend online.
Doc, you don't know. I was the one who carried your bag last time. That was face to face when you were on the rain.
Oh, Nipa. You see this one. I didn't know that it was you.
The bass voice. Okay, so I think the one who always read in class, the bass voice, yeah.
At the back, who sits at the back there? Is that Jude?
No, the one with the bass. Yeah.
Me, I mean, it's okay because it's bass. When I come to class, let me see your face. Because when I saw your performance in the exam, I said, this guy is good, but I don't see him in class. Is it one of the two who are good at school or something? Because I remember Jude from level 100, Gifty's class. I thought you were a special student. And you say, yes, you are special. Okay, Jude, read for us. Good to see you.
Okay, so, Madam, the paradigm of primacy of rights theories is plainly that of Locke. But there are contemporary theories of this kind. One of the best known is recent years been of Robert Nozick. Nozick too makes the assertion of rights to individual fundamental and then proceeds to discuss whether in what conditions we can legitimately demand obedience to the state.
Very good. So when we get to the fourth set of questions on the economic systems, you will see those who think we should go libertarian and those who think we should go socialist. Those who think don't tax my hard-earned resources in the name of going to take care of the poor. Why? Those are the rich guys, John Hospice, what have you. They think it is not morally appropriate to take from the rich. Because the more you have, the more you are taxed. It's a percentage thing. Say, you take so much from me. When I worked hard, I did my labor to get it. Remember, it's coming from Locke, John Locke, who says the preservation and the safety or security of private property. This is the reason why we look for an adjudicator and then what lawmakers that to give us common laws and then an executor who have the power. It's not like the animals. So Locke, that's what has been picked up here by Taylor, started the rightist language strongly in reaction to Hobbes, if you like. And then Robert Nozick and others like him, they are individualists. They would argue for libertarian, liberty, freedom, the man, over and above any social, balancing. That people are getting too many A's. So let us give the A people B, so that those who are getting F, we give them C to balance it. What kind of thing is that? He says, what do you want to balance? Can I set the argument? Let us run. Competitive setting, that's capitalism. Bluntly presented, open the space. Let everyone compete. The best will run. If they get $100 billion, let them get. If you to crawl and wake up at 9 a.m. when others woke up at 5 a.m. and they have already opened their shops. When you wake up, you say we should balance it. If you sleep, you will be hungry. If you open the door and it's competitive, we will all work at improving, says the blunt capitalist kind of orientation. The point is, then roles will come in. We all don't start from the same place. Mind you, today you think you are ahead. We have to have a fabric that holds us up. So let's balance it and be fair, because some didn't naturally start. Some stole from others to give their children a good startup. So they think they are hardworking. The colonialists may have stolen. Example, the rich, maybe MP or a rich lecturer, let me use myself, may have stolen or taken bribe or what have you and given the child a good starting point. Now the child is going to start the race with someone in some old corner. Then it will look as if your children are more intelligent than the other. It is the starting point. Says Rawls. That is how Rawls' discussion comes in. I want you to see the connection in the topics and the line of reasoning. So when we get there, you settle it. So Rawls says, put the differences in a way that will make up for the advantages. And so that is where his fairness comes in. The lady and the guy all got aggregate 6. They all apply to UG, for example. The lady comes, not only is she a lady, she comes from somewhere beyond the river B, where it takes days to cross over and take exam questions for them to do. No light, cars go there once a year, or I don't know, once a year, once a week. Look, no light, no electricity. She's doing the same exams like you. If she gets a guesses and you are in Accra here per sec, the gun is accessible to you, light everywhere, internet everywhere, and you get aggregates and she also gets aggregates, she'll get admission, you won't get, if the space is only one. It's justice as being fair, and we'll interrogate that a bit more when we see it. Affirmative action and all those is coming from there. So see the discourse from Locke. Here we are talking about Nozick and Locke and others like them who make the focus on right. It looks fine until you overdo it. That is the point. You are talking, which is important, the right of the child. Why? The girl child must have education and that. It's all right, which is fine. Until you talk rights without a commensurate regard for belonging. That's what Sir Jude read for me. And I have another person with thank you, say. Please raise your hand, say. This hand doesn't get tired, so keep it up. When I come, no, I'll call someone to read. Thank you, Abigail, too. Read for me. Who else wants to read? Just keep it up there. Abby, you are reading from here.
Okay. Primacy of right theories have been one of the formative influences on modern political consciousness. Thus, arguments like that of Nozick have at least a surface plausibility for our contemporaries, and sometimes considerably more. At the very least, opponents are brought up short and have to ponder how to meet the claims of an argument which reaches conclusions about political obedience which lie far outside the common sense of our society. And this because the starting point in individual rights has an undeniable prima facie force for us.
Well done. Prima facie. If you those who want to do law, keep these words, non-secretary. Prima facie, you use them. Listen, he says it wouldn't have been considered an option at all. In the past, no one, that's what is happening in the next line. This is so surprising because no one would have started thinking about political society or in a discourse, and they would have just started with rights. It wasn't rights. No one talked right, my right, my right. This is Taylor. Look at how old the people, they are shocked then. And the way people are talking right, they would have been shocked now. If there's any word like that. How? This is striking, something that is so striking, he says, because it wasn't always so. In an earlier phase of Western civilization, this is Taylor talking Western. Taylor is not African, he's not the Liberian president. He's a Canadian thinker. You can Google him and see. Babijachi's contemporary. Just Google, these things are very important. When you're reading, I didn't know no research. I said, true poor person forget. You lie, not for fellow, not for my courses. You will learn the thing, then get tired and get a good grade and go. All right. He says it wasn't so in the earlier phases of Western civilization, of course. Even for Western civilization, the earlier stages of it, this wasn't the way people were thinking. Not to speak of other civilizations. So think of Africa or non-African, Eastern religions and whatever. We are going to talk right to what? Which right? Perhaps it wasn't always good that there wasn't a talk of right. Okay. But it wasn't something that people were so fixated on. That's the point. The very idea, are you looking on my screen? I'm just doing some point out. See, I'm here now. The very idea of starting an argument whose foundation was the rights of the individual would have been strange and puzzling. That's the point he's making. About as puzzling as if I were to start with the premise that the queen rules by divine right. You might not dismiss what I said out of hand, but you would expect that I should at least have the sense to start with some less contentious premise. See that? And argue up to divine right, not to take it as my starting point. If you do that, everybody will look at you and say, you say God made someone to rule forever and ever, we they should be subservient. That one will create chaos. But if you were to start from somewhere, we need a stable governance system that can give us an organized this and make us unique, and this is, and maybe if we ended up mixing it up with some sense of, like God reigns and he's not questioned, and this, we should have something around saying for a sovereign. Maybe they won't even see it like that, than if you went straight forward and said, people have a divine right to. He's trying to show that the talk of right should be secondary, if we were even to admit it at all. Not because rights are not good, because you yourself, before you had the right to choose, I'm ending the thing for you. The choices that you say you have a right of were given by society, by a social context, a communal context of a kind. There have to be options. Make the note, write it down in your note, please. Before right makes sense. If there are no options, what do you have a right to? Now, if the options is what makes right meaningful, who gives the options? Society, you have a right to school, have a right to freedom of speech, have a right to this. It's the society that gives them. The same society that is giving you expects you to obey, or in other words, to feel obligated for other things, so that thing becomes someone's right. So my right to education is my father's responsibility. My father has a responsibility to ensure that my right to education is fulfilled. And your right to so and so has to be fulfilled by another. Where your rights end, that is where another person's obligation begins. So you are a two-in-one being, having rights, but at the same time having obligations. Why do we even begin to find it reasonable to start? There he goes again, and we argue and argue. So I want to argue that the answer to this question lies in the hold on us of what I have called atomism. When you go continue reading it, you see how I've set it up for you. If you read like this, you should understand. Okay, then he starts with the argument to show why atomism is false. It starts, that's what I'm showing you now from Aristotle. See, man is naturally a social being. Then he says that, borrowing this term, we could say that atomism affirms the self-sufficiency of man. That is what your class rep said, if you prefer the individual. You see that he said, if you prefer, because the individual language is the problem. Atomism affirms the self-sufficiency of man, human being, alone. That's what it is doing. And he, Taylor, wants to bring them into the, if you prefer the language that you use, the individual, the self-sufficiency of the individual. You see that? Now, next paragraph, that the primacy of right doctrine needs a background of this kind may appear evident to some, but it needs to be argued because it's variously denied that happens. Let's go. If I'm not careful, we'll do an exegesis of the text. You have to do that with yourself. The claim I am trying to make could be summed up in this way. Look on your screen. If you say someone has a right to something, then it is because of the nature of the being that commands that right. That's the discussion going on there. So he will go on to tell you that being must be worthy of rights. Okay? There has to be something about the being that makes it worthy of right. That same being who is worthy of rights has in its nature the responsibility taking. That's all I have said in a simple term. So the nature of the being, the communality or relationality is also natural, twice in our nature. You go on to all this long talk is to show that. So that same being that is entitled to rights, see the talk of idiot, capacities cannot be lost, worthy of respect. Read them, I'm pointing them. You are worthy of respect because of your being, which is not only individual, but it is also what? Social. He uses social, I use communal. Okay. See the paragraph here, I put something in brackets. These were my notes that I pulled out so you can easily see. So rights cannot be detached from a context of a kind. You see that? Rights of a mother at home. When I come to the office, the rights I have are not the right of a mother. My colleagues are not my children. Yeah, I am a lecturer, so I have my rights that come from my role as a lecturer here. My students and I, you see, so the context they're dealing with prescribes rights. That's why the context is where the rights become meaningful. You go to a Muslim mosque, that's how I should say, the mosque, and they are praying. The sisters will be at one place, the gentlemen will be at one place. You don't go demanding right of equal position there. The rights are defined by the context. If you are talking right outside of a context, you are sick. It is my right, my right. After all, human right, human right. Go and ask for human right to sit where the imam is inside it, and you are a sister. When it is the Muslim church, you can do that. If you want to belong there, belonging, then you got to do. You can't go ask. Let's use a lecture hall or exam hall, asking for right of freedom of movement at the exam hall. When the chief invigilator has issue, gentlemen, why are you walking around at the exam? You are a student. You came to write, and you say, after all, we are in Ghana. Freedom of movement. I have a right to freedom of movement. Say, saying, this is exam hall. You don't know. The context defines the right. You have to keep that. For you to be properly human, have you seen this? Read it. Otherwise, you'll be human, but not properly. The hermits, those who, hermits, I should say, who walk by and won't greet anybody. They think that after all, me, myself, and I, you are not a proper human being. Sociality is part of your being. See, the nature of the subject, the being, to be properly human. You don't say, me, I'm preserving my rights to the point that they have put you inside fridge to have your privacy. You'll be so private in the fridge. Are you human or you are fish that is being frozen? Take note, a human being is relational, communal, related to people, and so would have to be concerned about how that natural part of him or her is also taken care of. Has to be free, but also belong. Very good. We're almost done. Read this and see choices. Meaningful only in a social context or a civilization. You yourself, the language in which you are even going to make demands for your right is society given. An epoch defines that. So you are never self-sufficient in your being without society. See that paragraph? I put it there. Great. Oh, Mama, you've made me do all the teaching. Okay, those capacities you have naturally must be developed. Look here, this place. By a sustained or developing society. The society must sustain what you are naturally. You see that human life, I just told the level 100, I met them before you online. See, family is not optional. That is why when we find a child maybe lying by the roadside, they are taken to social welfare or something. Because you are not a crocodile that comes to give birth to it. I mean, lay the eggs at the seashore and goes, and that's it. No school fees, no antenatal, so you have gone to play football, you have hurt your soul. So the alligator's mother has come and is applying warm water on it. No. Alligator is finished. The day it lays its egg, it's finished. You are a human being. I show dreams are, and properly so means you have to be connected and groomed into a social being. That's the whole point. So that's the strength of the communitarian argumentation. That must not be confused to mean that therefore you don't have choice to bring a wife then. People say, we will not marry this one. That one day. You and who will not marry? Okay, I think that we are done. Read, I tell you, read this. This is what the primacy of right doctrine does. I want to be sure I've covered everything. Will not deprive us of this capacity. Okay, so commensurate recognition for both rights and obligations is what Taylor argues for. Shows the incoherence in the primacy of rights thesis. Goes further to now show you, I think you can do the rest of the reading. Let's end the paragraph there. Sorry. All these are elaborations that will show why he makes the point he makes. Let's go to the end, unless you have a question. Please, when you go read it, I've read this, I critiqued the paper, so I'm not going to write an exam. You are going to write an exam. So you want to know what the man was saying. He talks about state anarchy and what if you were groomed in an anarchic society, how you would have been. Now, okay. All right, there's the last page. So let's read the last paragraph. Please read for me. Let's start from here. Or better still, from the top to make better sense. The issue between here. So let's read from there. Please, who is reading for me? Let's have someone else very quickly. Okay, Bernard Quartin said, go ahead. You are muted, please. Please, you are muted, so unmute first. The issue between...
The issue between the atomists and their opponents therefore goes deep. It touches the nature of freedom, and beyond this, what it is to be a human subject. What is human identity, and how is it defined and sustained? It is not surprising, therefore, that the two sides talk past each other. For atomists, the talk about identity and its condition in social practice seems impossibly abstruse and speculative. They would rather found themselves on the clear and distinct intuition, which we all share. All of us in this society, that is about human rights. For non-atomists, however, this is very confident in their starting point.
There's very confidence in their starting point.
Yeah, it's a kind of blindness or a delusion of self-sufficiency, which prevents them from seeing that the free individual, the bearer of rights, can only assume this identity thanks to his relationship to a developed liberal civilization.
I hope you understand that. Hold on, sir. I hope everyone understands that. He's saying that that free individual whose rights you are advocating for, free, you know, that free individual couldn't have been free if, I'm highlighting the portion there, right? We are having challenge. That free individual couldn't have been free if he or she didn't live in a society, a civilization like theirs that has developed liberality. So it is the civilization, the cultural setting, the epoch. If we are talking Africa, it is that ethnic groupings way of life that has made you that individual supposedly a free person. You are a product of that. As I've told you, a very assertive African woman, it shows you that the person has had a certain kind of formal education. If that is not there, most of the time, an African woman, because of our cultural orientation, is quiet and sober, may not want to stand up, friendship to sense. It is the exposure to academia, I think, and other cultural ways of life that will make her even speak up boldly like that. The point is, the civilization we are in informs and produces the kind of individual that we have created. And that is why you cannot talk of rights without the thing that made you. Okay, so I continue. You are here now.
That there is an acidity in placing the subject in a state of nature where he could never attain this identity, and hence never create by contrast a society which respects it. Rather, the freedom individual who affirms himself as
free individual.
such.
Hold on. Rather, the free, everyone listen to what he's saying. Those are the summations. We are summing up. So take note of them. Clifford, please keep yourself muted. The background is quite noisy. Okay, so go ahead.
Rather, the free individual who affirms himself as such already has an obligation to complete, restore, or sustain the society within which this identity is possible.
It's
It
possible.
is.
Very good. Thank you. Hold on. He already, it's not something he's going to choose. The individual who goes looking for rights already has that obligation. It's something that he already has. Yeah, so just as rights are natural, obligations are also natural. What is natural means is given. Remember, Ortega, you don't choose it. You owe yourself and your community. I told you about going to lecture in my bikini. I owe it to myself and to my students to respect our communality together. Eh? So those obligations are already, that's why he has put it in italics for emphasis. It's not something you're now going to contemplate, whether you should be concerned about how your communal others will feel about what you are going to do. It doesn't mean they should dictate to you, but it means you should be cautious when you are frying plantain and chicken in a room that is shared by the four of you at 12 midnight or 1 a.m. when you know that some are sleeping and the sister is asthmatic and she cannot go and sleep under the tree or in the lecture hall at 1 a.m. midnight. That is the time you said, I bought my plantain, I bought my chicken, and the stove is mine and I've paid my rent. So you are frying plantain with red oil 1 a.m. midnight, and an asthmatic sister is lying in the name of rights. That how to express rights. You have bought a car. The music in the car is yours. So in your compound, in that neighborhood, you have opened it and you are bashing boom, 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 cha, boom, 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 boom. Somebody's daughter is learning for exams tomorrow. Then that person too, when they release their pipe hose, no, it's not that one. The one that is connected to the WC, and the bad waste is coming out. Apologies. They will let it pass the front of your house so that you see that he bought the thing. You see, you have to understand that. So your concern for the collective well-being, even without disregard for your rights and your autonomy, is very important. That is all that Tigler's argument seeks to make. Only if, like the personist points out, he will clarify language and make us rather focus on understanding these concepts as aspects of a being and not entities. Otherwise, it cannot be done. So the last paragraph.
It is clear that we can only join this issue by opening up questions about the nature of man. But it is also clear that the two sides are not on the same footing in relationship to these questions. Atomists are more comfortable standing with the intuition of common sense about the rights of individuals and are not at the need to open these wider issues. And in this, they derive support in those philosophical traditions which come to us from the 17th century and which started with the
Should I
postulation
help you
of
from
an.
there? Let me help you
Yes,
from
please, I
there.
can't see it very well.
Don't worry, yes, it's a bit blurred. Which started with the postulation of an extensionless subject. That is how the social contract theories started. They made it look as if they are dealing with a subject without extension. You don't have a mother, you don't have a father, don't have a sibling, nothing. We are only thinking about me, myself, and I, and what I think will benefit me. So I went into social contract. He said that you always see Ross, you see they say you can't conceptualize yourself outside of social context. No, because you're already in society. It's like pretend I didn't know whose work you are marking. When I can tell that this is my prayer partner, someone I'm praying with to do well in exam. And in the scripture, I say pretend as if it's that pretending doesn't work. You're already a being. There we go. So he says there's a presumed watch postulation of an extensionless subject, epistemologically a tabula rasa. You understand that? So when it comes to knowledge, as if he didn't know anything. That's what the atomist is doing. And politically, a presuppositionless bearer of rights. You don't have any presuppositions. You don't know whether this will benefit Asante or Akan or Gan. How? You're already living and you already know you are Fante or you are Gan or Asante or Ghanaian or West. How can you pretend that you are going to make laws or make decisions that you are being objective about? So you did it, you are already in society. You're already a female, you know, you're already rich or poor. So if you are supposed to make a decision about taxation, don't say, let's try and be objective, let's pretend as if it's not about us. How can I pretend? I know that if I make the decision this way, it will affect the rich when I'm rich. So this is what he's saying, that don't pretend about it. Human beings are already a part of society. They are not detached from it. Let's finish it. It is not an accident that these epistemological and political doctrines are often found in the writings of the same founding figures. Now, let's conclude. But if this starting point no longer appears to us self-evident, then we have to open up questions about the nature of the subject. Take note, it's about what a human being naturally is, the nature of the human subject, and the conditions of human agency. When you are acting, you are making choices, or reflecting. Agency means you are choosing. You are the agent of choice. Is it really you alone, or a combination of how you have been groomed psychologically, culturally, your faith, what have you, all comes into play in that choice that seems to be individual choice? Could it be a collective? You see that a choice that is inspired not only by your uniqueness, but by also your belonging. Some people are doing law because their father wanted them to. And the society would make them want to be lawyers to come and fight for people's rights. Not that they like law armor. You are a product of a complex blend of individuality and communality. Okay? So the conditions of human agency. Among these is the issue about atomism. And he said this is important for any theory of rights, but also for a great deal else beside. Yeah. The whole sociopolitical framework is grounded on this. But the issue about atomism also underlines many of our discussions about obligation and the nature of freedom. This is the law court. Did he freely choose to die? Or is society that has the guy freely chosen to be an armed robber? Or society has made him so? Even though he pulled the trigger, but society left him handicapped. He didn't know where else to go. There was no social welfare. You don't want to look at that side of the discourse. If you are always looking at individual, you blame people all the time. What about the system and the part it should have played to groom people that are conscious about the welfare of others? There was no way out. Perhaps there would have been a way out, but how realistic was the option? Kempinski is an option for breakfast. Why are you in the night market queue? Huh? Oh, you think Kempinski doesn't have breakfast? If you take 90 cities or under, you get a fine breakfast, Kempinski. Why are you in the gobe queue, my brother? Are they not options? The meaningfulness of the option is society, the collective, defined. And so what? The nature of freedom, as can already be sensed from the above. That is why it is useful to put it again on our agenda. All quoting Charles Taylor. Excellent paper, well written, well critiqued by the Miles version. We are waiting for a critique of the Miles one as well. I'm done. I want to pause the recording and take questions if any. If not, we are done. Any questions?